Call 1-800-DIVORCE.
What's going on? It's now 3 o'clock, Chad. Here we start with the Portland Trailblazers. It was a big night for Scoot.
Here's Sexton across the timeline. 20 seconds left. 5-second differential. Blazers lead by 3. Sexton up top. Gives up to Markin behind the screen. A deep three for the tie is good with 13.9 to play. Blazers are not going to call a timeout. We're down to 11 seconds left. Scoot brings it across the timeline. Down to 6 seconds. Scoot's got it. Top of the key. Drives, attacks on Kessler. Stops, turns, fades. Hits it!
Yeah, big night. Scoot with the game winner. 122-120 the final. Blazers over the Jazz. Scoot had 18 points and 10 assists. Denny Avdia and Shaedon Sharpe each scored 27. Portland's back in action tomorrow. The Mavericks are in town. Tip-off will be at 7 from Moda Center. Chris Burkhardt will have game day live here in your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. Elsewhere, the Sacramento Kings have fired head coach Mike Brown after 5 straight losses. And from the world of sports, legendary broadcaster Greg Gumbel has passed away at the age of 78 due to cancer.
The home of the OSAA is 620 Rip City Radio. It's time for the Rip City Drive, brought to you by Lazy Boy. What's your strategy for comfort? Featuring the crazy and often irrational longtime Portland radio vet, Chad Dewing.
Blazers are not going to call a timeout. We're down to 11 seconds left. Scoot brings it across the timeline. Down to 6 seconds. Scoot's got it. Top of the key. Drives, attacks on Kessler. Stops, turns, fades. Hits it! With 1/10 of a second, Scoot Henderson gives the Blazers the lead. Timeout, Utah. Markkanen and Kessler, the 2 7-footers on the floor for Utah. The lob to the rim, knocked away by Kling, and he grabs it. It's a Rip City winner. The Blazers come back from down 15, and they take down the Utah Jazz 122-120 on Scoot Henderson's game winner.
Strap in. The Rip City Drive with Chad Dewing starts now.
That was fun last night at Moda Center with the Trailblazers getting the win. Scoot Henderson had the game winner, and Chauncey Billups was not there last night. He's going to miss tomorrow night as well, as he's with family after the passing of his grandmother, Maddie Billups, who passed away at the age of 90. So our condolences to Coach Billups and his family. I was really close to my Nana, and I know what it's like to lose a grandparent, especially one that is so special to you. And I know for Billups, his grandmother was very special. He made that very clear. If you listen to his Hall of Fame induction speech, he brought her up multiple times. And so you knew just by hearing Coach Billups talk about her how critical she was in his life. So Coach Billups is dealing with the loss of his grandmother. So Coach Bjorken was handling duties last night as the interim head coach. And, you know, he coached that game a little bit differently. And we saw some guys in the lineup at the end of the game that normally are not there. And so it provided an opportunity for Scoot to rise up and have a big moment. And he did. He hit the game winner. He played a very good game, had a double-double. And I think it was his best game of the season. Even at halftime, I was up there at Section 113, and, you know, the people I was speaking with, they thought that was his best half of the season. It turned out to be his best game. So those type of moments are critical. And I'll share more thoughts on this, but it kind of gave you a look into how maybe things should be in terms of playing time and how it's doled out, especially as we press forward into the season to continue to get more minutes for the young players. You know, the guys who you think can be a part of the core moving forward, and then the guys you might be a little bit uncertain of. You've got to get those guys more time, and the Blazers were able to do that last night, and it turned out to be a very good moment. So I hope you enjoyed your Christmas time, and hopefully you were able to spend time with family or friends or both. I had a chance to spend a lot of time with family, which was really nice. And, you know, this time of year in radio is always weird because it's a bit choppy. You know, we had time off for Christmas. I'm working today. I'll be back in on Monday, and we have a Blazer game on Monday night, and then we're right into New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. So it's a bit choppy, but I wanted to come in today and be able to talk some sports because I'm excited about some of the different things that we have coming up. NFL is getting hot and heavy now as we get ready for the final week of the regular season. The Kansas City Chiefs have clinched the home field advantage throughout the AFC. The NFC is getting more defined. So I think we're starting to get a good idea of who the pretenders are, who the contenders are, and the 2 or 3 teams that have a legitimate chance to win a Super Bowl. So we got to talk some NFL. The Broncos will be in Cincinnati tomorrow to meet the Bengals. Cincinnati's got very shaky playoff hopes. The Broncos, with a win, would solidify a playoff spot and lock up their first playoff berth since 2015. It's been like 10 years. The last time they were in the postseason is when they won the Super Bowl with Peyton Manning. So it's been a long drought. So the Broncos are on the verge. If they don't win the game tomorrow, they just have to win a game so they could take care of business against Kansas City and Denver in the final weekend of the regular season. But the Chiefs now will get a chance to rest some guys and then regroup and reset for their playoff run. And we all know that the road now, once again, will go through Kansas City in the AFC if you want to reach the Super Bowl. The question is, who's good enough to go in there and get the win? Is it Baltimore? Is it Buffalo? Or is Kansas City going to continue to find ways to win football games? So we got to talk about that. And, of course, we've got the next round of the college football playoff coming up with a game on New Year's Eve, and then we have 3 games on New Year's Day. It's going to be awesome because it kicks off in the morning at 10 with Arizona State and Texas on New Year's Day, and that will flow right into the Rose Bowl with Oregon and Ohio State. And what a rematch this is going to be. Look, I was surprised at the amount of complaining from experts, from commentators, from fans around the country about the first round of playoff games. Look, I'm all for playoff expansion. I'm all for what it brought to college football this year. I think it enhanced the game. I think it made it better across the board, and it gave a lot more hope to a lot more fan bases and schools across the country. We've been over this time and time again. I understand that the first-round games were blowouts, not competitive, not a lot of intrigue. But I'll tell you what, when I flipped on the TV and I saw Indiana and Notre Dame in South Bend on the field for a campus site playoff game, I knew it was great. And this is the first year. They're going to work out some of the, kinks. They're going to continue to tinker and make it better. And I think we all know that there are certain things they can do to make it better. But I think most importantly, they're going to continue to expand this thing. I think we're going to get out to 16 teams in the very near future. And then with that, we'll see a difference in how the tournament is seeded. We're going to see more teams get in from the SEC and the Big Ten. So it's going to solve a lot of the issues that we saw in this first year. But I think the best thing to do as a college football fan is not overreact to, the first 4 games of the playoff. It takes time to iron this out. What you have to remember is that the people who are setting this thing up, who are leading the charge, is the same group of people that gave us all of these incomplete systems to determine a national champion over the last, several decades and all of my life. The same people have been in charge, and the same people that are resistant to let go of the past and move forward into the future, those are the same people that are trying to meld the bowl system with the playoff together, and it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And I think with this playoff this year, the best way it was explained to me, with this current field, the 12 team, and with the expansion, that in order to get this done and to have a 12-team playoff is you had to go out much in the way that Congress puts together bills. They have to get support to be able to do it. You have to have a certain number of people on board. You have to have certain conferences on board because they are trying to get away from the current system and expand to a 12-team playoff. So in order to do that, the concessions had to be made, meaning, we'll play along and we'll be a part of the 12-team playoff, but we want to place an emphasis on the importance of the conference championship games. In fact, the conference winners will get buys in the playoff. And so certain concessions were made, and that's how we wound up with the current system and the way that this 12-team playoff is set up. But it's not going to last but for one more year, and then we're going to quickly see more expansion, and we'll see a change in how the seeds are divvied out. I think the most common fix, or at least one of the easy fixes, is just to take the teams and then seed them 1 through 12. You have your 12 teams. You give automatic bids to the conference championship winners. And then from there, you rank the teams 1 through 12. And then you seed the teams accordingly. And then 1 through 4 will get the bye, regardless of whether they're a conference champion or not. And then when you have that, you don't have Oregon sitting in a spot where they were the best team, they were the number 1 seed, and now they're sitting there with the most difficult path to a national championship. You'll have a situation where you don't have Ohio State and Oregon playing in the second round when they're clearly 2 of the best teams in all of college football. So I think that's the clear, easy fix is to make sure that you don't give automatic buys to the conference winners. You rank the teams 1 through 12, and then from there you set your playoff bracket up. That's how you do it. It's very simple, and they'll get better at it, but it's going to take time. Nothing comes easy with college football because of the morons that are running the sport. Idiots. Everyone's trying to protect their own interests. They care more about their own interests and making sure they can get their hands on as much money as possible. And when you have people who are concerned only about their own interests, you sometimes don't get the best for everyone or the sport. And that's really what's going to happen. So with expansion, we're going to see more spots available for the Big Ten and the SEC. You're going to get away from the buys handed out to conference championship winners. And I think we'll eventually move to having teams, seated appropriately. So if they move to 16 teams here in the near future, they'll rank the teams 1 through 16, and then they will set the bracket up. And that's how you do it. And then you wind up with better matchups as you get deeper into the tournament, and that's the way it's going to be. But I'm excited. I'm really excited for the matchups in this round. We have a couple of underdogs in Boise State and Arizona State. I'm excited to see what those two teams can do. Are we going to see an upset? And then, of course, the Titan matchup between Oregon and Ohio State. And I've got a lot of thoughts on that. For the Ducks, the question is, what tinkering do they do based on the success they had in that first matchup? The two basics for me that I saw in that game, one, Oregon's ability to stretch Ohio State's defense in the passing game. And big play the Buckeyes' defense to death with Dylan Gabriel, who was electric in that game. He was accurate. He was delivering the football on time. He made big plays downfield, and they were able to gouge Ohio State's defense, which was critical. The other aspect of the game that I thought was terrific was Oregon's adjustments and the way they limited the Ohio State run game in the second half and forcing them to become more of a one-dimensional type offense. That's going to be critical again in the Rose Bowl. The one advantage that Oregon definitely has is at quarterback. Dylan Gabriel is right now the best quarterback in the tournament, in my mind. Will Howard is not. And if you force Ohio State into a situation where they have to throw the football down after down after down to move the chains because you've limited the run game, that's going to put you in a position to create turnovers. Because Will Howard, if given the opportunity, will make some mistakes. Now, he played terrific against Tennessee. That was Ohio State's most complete game. But I think we all understand that they're not going to play that well against an opponent like Oregon. The Ducks will be ready. The question is, can they find more of those big plays in the passing game to put the points on the board that are necessary to get the win? And can they limit the Ohio State run game like they did in the second half in that first matchup in October? Boy, it's going to be good. What a week we have coming up in sports. It's crunch time in the NFL. We're getting the college football playoff. We're getting our feet wet with the whole new venture with the 12 teams. It's a good thing. All right, Justin Myers is going to join me at 4:20. Got to get his take on Oregon and Ohio State, and we'll preview the show we have coming up on New Year's Day down at Spirit Mountain Casino for the kickoff to the college football playoff with the new 12-team format. He and I are going to be down there on the 1st from 10 until 1, getting ready for the Rose Bowl. So Justin Myers is going to stop by at 4:20. Brenden Slaughter is here. You got the Rip City Drive. I'll get to the Blazers here in just a moment. It's not a hot take. Most experts would agree that Ohio State right now, the most talented roster remaining in the college football playoff from top down in terms of recruiting, in terms of 5 stars, 4 stars, the amount of money they spent in NIL. But just because you have the most talent doesn't mean you're going to go out and win a national championship. Until that game against Tennessee, Ohio State has had difficulties putting together the perfect game throughout the course of the year. They've been marred by some inconsistency, not much, but some. And I think that a lot of people have overreacted to the loss they suffered at the hands of Michigan. Aside from that game, they played good football. They had one bad game, and then they lost in the final moments to Oregon at Autzen. This is going to be a titanic matchup. The one area where I think Oregon has shown great improvement is with their coaching staff. Dan Lanning is growing in this role as head coach. We got to remember he's a young head coach. I love Dan Lanning. I love the energy he brings. Obviously, he's a terrific recruiter, but he's laying a foundation and has built a terrific culture there. So he knows what he's doing, but he's getting better at the in-game decision-making, like you would expect from any person when they spend more time on the job. You get a better handle on things. You get better with your thought process, the way you want to handle things, the way you want to do things. You get more synergy with your staff. And I like he and Will Stein. I think they're terrific. I just like Oregon's culture. Dan Lanning's done a heck of a job. Again, props to Rob Mullins for, having his short list and going against the grain and hiring Dan Lanning. He had his eyes set on Lanning. They went out and made the hire. He did not go inside the Oregon family, and that was the right call. Because if you want to win a national championship, you've got to have someone that can recruit his ass off and be able to dip into different parts of the country, and Lanning certainly could do that. And Lanning is very happy to be at Oregon. He knows he's got the right support there. Obviously, they've got a ton of NIL cash to be able to work with. They've got all the tools necessary to be able to compete at the highest of level, which is terrific. This game's going to be awesome. It's unfortunate that this game has to happen in this round because this is a national championship type game. Now, I'm a huge Dillon Gabriel fan. I grew up in Oklahoma. He played 2 years for the Sooners, and he's one of my favorite Oklahoma quarterbacks of all time. I knew what the Ducks were getting when they went out and got him, and I was like, man, to go from Bo Nix to Dillon Gabriel is phenomenal. Dillon Gabriel is a terrific playmaker. He can utilize his legs. He's very strong and stout for a quarterback at his size. So he can be physical in the run game. He's very nimble with his feet. He's a little bit undersized, but he's very creative at maneuvering in the pocket and buying time to be able to find receivers open downfield. He's very accurate. He knows where to place the football. Getting the ball out on time and on target is critical for all quarterbacks. Gabriel could do that. He'll gouge you in the run game if necessary. He can pick up yards with his legs when a play breaks down. And with his experience, I think that's a major advantage. We're seeing it with Bo Nix. We saw it at Oregon with Bo Nix. We're seeing it now in the NFL. And Dillon Gabriel, when you have 60-plus starts at quarterback and you've seen everything that a defense can throw at you and you've been in big moments time after time after time, you're just not going to be overwhelmed by any of those type of situations. And I think he was the perfect steadying force early in the year when they were still trying to find themselves. They got banged up on the offensive line. They got off to a slow start against Idaho and Boise State. But it was Dillon Gabriel's steadiness that I think helped a lot of the guys on the offensive line and the skill position players. It takes time to adjust and adapt to a brand new team, to learn the terminology, the language, your teammates, the tendencies, where they want to be, where they want the football, all the different things that are going on. But as the season went along, Gabriel continued to get better. And he played his best football in the biggest moments. Against Ohio State, awesome. Penn State, awesome. When the Ducks needed him to rise up and make plays, he did. He's a big-time quarterback. He's a big-game quarterback. He did it at Oklahoma. And he did it at UCF. Everywhere he's been a big-game quarterback. So that gives him a major advantage going into the Rose Bowl. The question with Ohio State really isn't about talent. I mean, they're loaded to the gills with talent. But can they put together a similar type performance that we saw against Tennessee? Will they have the balance on offense? Will Howard be able to avoid the turnover and continue to make plays to his dynamic receivers on the outside? Who's going to win the battle in the trenches? Again, Oregon's job of limiting Ohio State's run in the second half of that game in October was terrific. This is a great game. I can't wait. I cannot wait for this game. And we got a lot of good games. I think Arizona State, Texas has got a chance to be really good. Penn State, I'm anxious to see what they're going to be able to do in the passing game. We know they can run the football. They got dynamic backs. They have the best tight end in the country. But their passing game lacks some of that flavor sometimes. So will they be able to create balance? And how's Boise State going to deal with that front seven of Penn State, which is nasty? They pressure the quarterback. They're very stout. How's Boise State going to react to that? And for Arizona State, how are they going to deal with the different type of athletes they're going to be dealing with at the line of scrimmage that they have not seen? Because Texas, like Ohio State, loaded roster, a lot of talent, big and strong at the line of scrimmage. How's Arizona State going to react to that? The cool thing is, with these quarterbacks, Dylan Gabriel at Oregon, I think he's the best quarterback in the tournament. I think Sam Levitt from Arizona State's the second best right now. Out of West Lynn, ladies and gentlemen. But he's very accurate. His anticipation, the delivery of the football, his ball placement, his understanding of the offense, and then, like Gabriel, he's also deceptively quick with his feet. He can move, he can buy time, he can run and pick up yards with his legs. And then Cam Scadaboo's the most physical runner in college football. The guy's an animal. I can't wait to see him against Texas. There's also a lot of guys on the Sun Devil roster from Texas that are getting a chance to play against the Longhorns. Big deal for them. I'm anxious to see if they can shine through. But it's going to be awesome. New Year's Day is going to be epic. So Penn State and Boise State on New Year's Eve, and then the triple header on New Year's Day. And I'm hoping that eventually with the portal and the calendar, I would like them to somehow rearrange the schedule to where we can eventually crown a national champion on New Year's Day, or at least by January 2nd. Growing up, the greatest thing about growing up when I was younger was New Year's Day. So many bowl games, and all the big games were on one day, New Year's Day. It was a barrage of football games, and I love it. So I'm very excited for New Year's Day this year. I think it's going to be terrific. So Justin Myers is coming up at 4:20, and we'll really dive into this matchup with Oregon and Ohio State. But I do want to talk about what we saw last night. Blazers and Jazz from Moda Center. Now, keep in mind, Chauncey Billups is out with family due to the passing of his grandmother, Maddie Billups. Nate Bjorkgren was the interim head coach last night. He'll also coach the game tomorrow against Dallas. So we saw some different wrinkles last night from the Trailblazers. Now, they were down 10 early fourth, about 10 minutes to play, 94-84, and then they ripped off 11 straight points, and they retook the lead. And then they just continued to go back and forth. And then we had this wild sequence where the Blazers, with 50 seconds left in the game, were up by 5 at 120-115. And then the Jazz were somehow able to tie it up, setting the stage for Scoot Henderson. Let's take a listen to Travis Demers.
Here's Sexton across the timeline. 20 seconds left, 5-second differential. Blazers lead by 3. Sexton up top, gives up to Markin behind the screen. A deep three for the tie is good with 13.9 to play. Blazers are not going to call a timeout. We're down to 11 seconds left. Scoot brings it across the timeline. Down to 6 seconds. Scoot's got it. Top of the key. Drives, attacks on Kessler. Stops, turns, fades. Hits it! With 1/10 of a second, Scoot Henderson gives the Blazers the lead. Timeout, Utah.
Yeah, great call from Travis Demers. Terrific call from Trav. Great shot from Scoot Henderson. And it was very interesting in this game because what we saw in the fourth quarter was a lot of Denny Avdia. He played the entire stretch in the fourth, and he was electric last night. 27 points, 8 rebounds, and 6 assists. He is becoming one of their best players. He's settled into his role off the bench. He plays with confidence. He plays with physicality. He's a playmaker. He can score. He's fearless. Love everything about Denny Avdia. And he's just emerging. He's easily going to become a fan favorite for the way that he goes about his business. But what we saw Nate Bjorkgren do in that fourth quarter is Jeremy Grant was on the bench for most of the quarter. Anthony Simons did not play in the final 6 minutes. He was on the bench. He didn't have a good game last night. Couldn't find a shot. He struggled to get going, only had 8 points. But the final 6 minutes, they went with that lineup where they had, Kamara out there, Ayton, Avdia, Scoot, Shaden. they leaned on the young guys, and for the first time in what feels like forever, Scoot Henderson was in a position to impact the game late. And he had a great first half, and he ended up playing one of his best games as a Trailblazer, 18 points and 10 assists. It was much needed, plus the game winner. And I'm just wondering if this might be the game we look back upon, a couple of months down the road, a few months down the road, or a year from now, and say that was the springboard moment for Scoot. I certainly hope so. But after the game, Coach Bjorken was asked about the different lineups. And he absolutely coached and handled the roster differently than what we've seen from Coach Billups, even though he denied it. Take a listen.
Yeah, I just thought that lineup really had it going, and I rode them, the whole, last part of the game. I thought that lineup was playing with a tremendous amount of energy. I thought they were extremely confident, and it was just one of those things that was the group that was kind of rolling. So I decided to stay with it as long as I could.
Well, let's get into it. What you like the look that Scoot got? What do you think of that play?
Yeah, it was he had such a great game, a double-double, and I thought that. Even in the first half, I thought he was playing really well. To have, double-digit assists and just the floor game that he was playing, I liked his confidence. I liked it. Even the play before he tried to attack, we didn't quite get the rebound down there, but I liked it, and I liked the shot. I decided not to call a timeout and let it play on, and the crowd was really behind us. It was a fun game for the guys. It really was.
You mixed up the minutes and the lineups differently than what we usually see around here. Was there a moment for you when you said, heck, I'm the head coach here, I'm going with my gut, whatever it takes to win this game?
Yeah, and I do just exactly what Coach Billups, would have done. That group, that some of those guys that were in there late, that group was just playing really well. So I decided to run that group longer. Instead of breaking that rhythm. And I thought it was a big, there was guys on the bench who were really supportive, and when I called their name to go back into the game, they produced. I thought early in the game, when it maybe wasn't going our way, I don't know how much we got down, but we were getting a lot of passes tipped. They weren't like selfish plays. We were trying to make the right play to the next guy. Someone got tipped. I remember Jeremy was running down the lane and someone was making a pass to the corner man and it kind of hit him. So for us to fight through all of that stuff, I thought we generated a lot of shots that we wanted, especially in the fourth quarter when we needed them the most.
All right. Props to Coach Bjorken. He really coached a good game last night, but he did not handle everything the way that Chauncey Billups would have. If Coach Billups was on the sideline last night, Scoot would have been on the bench and Anthony Simons would have been back in the game. And he would have leaned heavily on Grant and Simons. That's just how he would have done it. And Scoot Henderson would not have been in a position to impact the game late or to have that moment. And for me at this point, it's the most important thing right now for the Trailblazers, aside from talent acquisition, is the development of their young core. And that's what I'm focused on. That's what I watch from night to night is what we're seeing from the young guys who they believe can be a part of the core moving forward. And those players would be Denny Avdia, Donovan Clingan, Shaden Sharp, Tamani Kamara, and Scoot Henderson. Now, 4 of those 5, I think we can say there's definitely a place for them moving forward. The player that we're not certain of, or at least I'm not certain of right now, is Scoot Henderson. And I would imagine most of you are in the same boat. Scoot does, based on what I've heard from people around the team, he works hard. He puts in the time. We just haven't seen that, really turn into anything substantial on the floor yet. Not a good shot maker, struggles with turnovers and decision-making at times. And really, I guess the best way I can describe it is that when Scoot's playing, for the most part, or at least most of this year, you don't really notice that he's on the floor. That's because has not been a difference maker. But last night was different. His decision-making was good. He made good decisions with the basketball. That last shot was a clutch moment for him. He didn't turn it over. He was really impactful throughout the course of the game last night. But one of the big differences was he had time to play. And he was on the floor for the final 6 minutes of the game. I'm a big believer that the Blazers, they're not going to be a playoff team this year. They're going to be destined for the lottery. So why not put Scoot in more situations like that to allow him an opportunity to have an impact and to grow. And then you'll continue to find out whether he's going to be the guy or not. I think that's pretty obvious. And I would make the argument right now that, handing over big minutes to Simons, Grant, or Ayton is in some ways a detriment to the young players on the roster who you want to continue to develop and that you believe will be a part of the core. There's no doubt that Tamani Kamara has been terrific this year. We've seen a major jump from year 1 to year 2. Denny Avdia, in a very short period of time, went through the early season struggles, went from the starting lineup to the bench, and now he's settled in, and he's one of the best players on the team. He's been fabulous. You've got to be thrilled at what you're seeing from Denny Avdia, and I'm sure the front office is geeked. One, he's on a very player, team-friendly contract, and he's ultra-productive on both ends of the floor. So both Tamani Kamara and Denny Avdia have been great. Donovan Clingan, he played 13 minutes last night. He's proven that he can be an impactful player on the floor, especially with his defense and his shot blocking. He's got to get more minutes than that so he can continue to develop. We're going to look back in a couple of years and be like, how'd they get him? They stole him in the draft. They're excited about Clingan. Love him, but he needs more time. He needs more minutes. And I understand about the conditioning and getting used to the NBA game, but he can handle more of a load, and he's one of those players that with more time, he's only going to continue to get better. I just hate seeing Clingan get 13 minutes a night when you have guys who probably aren't going to be a part of the long-term future here in Portland eating up some of those minutes where he could be playing. So Donovan Clingan, Tamani, Denny, and then Shaedon Sharpe. Sharpe was awesome last night. I think he was 5 of 10 from 3. He's played much better over the last few games, getting his confidence back with his shot. He's playing at a good pace. His decision-making is solid. He's been terrific. Not consistently terrific, but he's shown flashes of brilliance. So that's 4 guys right now, 4 young pieces that you have to be excited about. The player that I'm not certain of is Scoot. Last night he played and looked the part, but he needs more time like that for that type of development. So Nate Bjorkgren can say that he handled it just like Chauncey Billups would have, but it's not true. He coached it differently and did a heck of a job. And so I'm anxious to see what he does tomorrow with Dallas coming to town. All right, we'll keep things rolling here on the Rip City Drive. Hope you're enjoying your Friday. I'm not sure what's going on with the traffic, but what a mess out there today. You people working today? I guess it's a getaway weekend for the New Year's. All right, we'll come back. If you want to jump on board, 503-248-0620. You can reach out to me, Chad, in Rip City on social. You got the Rip City Drive. All right, Justin Meyer is going to talk Oregon and Ohio State coming up at 4:20. We'll be down at Spirit Mountain Casino on New Year's Day from 10 until 1 for a little Rose Bowl preview show as we continue our countdown to the college football playoff kickoff and this first year of the 12-team format, which is terrific. And that's going to be a fun day. I'm really excited about watching Arizona State, Texas, and that will lead right into the Rose Bowl where we get this titanic matchup between the Buckeyes and the Ducks. The one thing I was going to say about Dan Lanning, we talk about the improvement of just, the work that he's done, week to week this season. But where I really think I've been the most impressed has been the development of the players, the way that he and his staff have coached these guys up. They got off to the slow start to the season. I know a lot of Duck fans freaked out about that. But what we've seen is week to week to week, they just continued to get better in all levels. The offensive line, which started slow, has gotten significantly better from first week up until now. The defense has continued to perform. What I like, too, is just the personality of this team. They can win games in a variety of different ways now because they're more stout at the line of scrimmage. So if they need to put pressure on the passer, they can do that. If they need to shut down the run game, they can step up and do that. They can win games by running the football, and they've got Dylan Gabriel who can, whip it around the field. They can win games high scoring, low scoring. They've been able to do it each and every way. And just like in that Big Ten title game against Penn State, that game did not play out the way that I think most people thought because Penn State had a good game plan, and they put points up on the board. So Oregon put their throttle on the offense and got the job done. So it's been a heck of a coaching job. The one thing I was listening to today was Nick Saban. This can be one of the challenges for Dan Lanning and his staff, so we'll see how they adjust. But the hard part is when you get this significant time off, multiple weeks before you play a meaningful bowl game, the problem is in practice, you don't want to tackle because you don't want guys to get hurt. You're trying to keep guys healthy and fresh, for the games, and so guys don't tackle in practice. Well, the problem is you show up in the bowl game, and because you haven't had that type of physical contact, guys haven't, been in the trenches for, multiple weeks. All of a sudden you show up in a game and you're missing a bunch of tackles. So the question is, through your preparation, through your practice time, what are some different things you can do to keep guys sharp and ready to roll? Now, I would much prefer rest and time off to get guys healthy, and the Ducks should be the healthiest they've been all season going into this game against Ohio State. But those are the things I would be concerned about. Without the contact, the physical contact of playing and having multiple weeks off, how does that impact the game early? Maybe a couple of missed tackles. Could that lead to a big play? It's very difficult, but, I think Dan Lanning and his staff, that challenge, I can't wait to see how they prepare for that. So Christmas, I think I mentioned, I learned this with Isaac. And for you parents out there with special needs kids, with Isaac, and he's going to be 22 in February, which is hard to believe. But, with his autism, holidays throughout the course of his lifetime always been very difficult. And I think for Isaac, when he gets into, a situation in a house where he's in a room full of people, family members, friends, the stimulation, it's just too much for him. It kind of puts him in a situation where he's set up to fail because of the overstimulation. There's just too much going on. It's chaos, and he doesn't process well in those type of environments. So last year I made the decision. I was like, you know what? We should do something different to put him in a position to have a better Christmas and to succeed. And then everyone else can have a good Christmas as well. And so we did a road trip out to the beach last year. And it went well, and we had a good time, just he and I, for a couple of days. And so I talked to him throughout the course of the year, and he wanted to do the same thing this year. So on Christmas Eve morning, we got our stuff together, and we decided to do a road trip out to Ocean Shores, which is up there north in Washington, north of Long Beach. You have to go through Aberdeen to get out to Ocean Shores. And for Isaac, it's all about the journey, right? So instead of going up I-5 and cutting through Centralia to get over to Ocean Shores, which is the fastest route, he likes to take Highway 30 up and go through Astoria and then take 101 out to Aberdeen, and then eventually you make your way out to Ocean Shores. It lengthens the trip by over an hour, but for him, it's all about the journey. So we got in the rig, got our coffee, and then we went on out on the road, and he loves Astoria, and he loves going to El Tapatio there in Astoria off the main road. So we stopped there to get an early dinner, and he ordered up 6 tacos, and they're big tacos, and he ate and crushed every single one of them.
That's awesome.
And he sat back in his seat. We're sitting there in the booth, and he's like, "Oh, I think my stomach's a little bit tore up right now." I'm like, "Well, yeah, you just crushed 6 tacos, you crazy man." So we did that, and he likes to walk around and talk to everyone in the restaurant because for him, being out in public and getting a chance to connect with people is what he loves the most. Trying to make friends, trying to connect with people. He likes to give hugs, which can be good or bad depending on the individual. But he loves the connection with human beings. He loves it more than anything. And so he basically said hi and talked to everyone in the restaurant. And then we took off from there and continued our journey out to Ocean Shores. We stopped off to get some coffee when we hit Aberdeen and eventually made our way out to the Shiloh Inn in Ocean Shores. And, the weather on Christmas Eve out there was nice. It was cool, probably about 45, but it was clear skies and sunny. So when we got there, it was already dark because the sun set at like 4:31. But he had packed a collapsible chair, so he wanted to go sit out on the sand, and so he did. He went out in the sand in the cold and had his feet in the sand for a bit and watched the waves. And then he came in after a while, and, we just chilled. And then we got up the next morning, went back to Aberdeen, got some coffee. He got something to eat, and then we just started our slow journey back into town. But it worked out great. And so, it's just funny how you learn over the course of time. It's like, okay, instead of trying to force someone into a situation who can't handle the situation and expect him to be normal, I figured let's try and put him in a position to succeed. And it's worked out. Everyone has a peaceful Christmas, but Isaac and I had a good time. And he loves the journey. He drove all the way there and all the way back. And he's a good driver. He does some things. He's got a couple of quirks, especially when it comes to the cruise control that gives me anxiety. But we made it, and he loves doing that. He's a by-the-book type of a driver, so I'm trying to work with him on some of the gray area when it comes to speed limits and how to deal with people who want to go a little bit faster, but it turned out to be good. All right, we'll keep things rolling here. Justin Myers coming up at 4:20. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad doing.
From the Goldberg Jones Sports Desk, your 620 Rip City Radio headlines. Goldberg Jones. Call 1-800-DIVORCE.
All right, what's going on, my friends? It's now 4 o'clock. It was a big night for the Trailblazers and Scoot Henderson.
Down to 6 seconds. Scoot's got it. Top of the key. Drives, attacks on Kessler. Stops, turns, fades. Hits it! With 1/10 of a second, Scoot Henderson gives the Blazers the lead.
Travis Demers on the call. Blazers get the win. Scoot had 18 points and 10 assists and the game winner. Denny Avdia and Shaden Sharp each scored 27. The Blazers back in action tomorrow. The Mavericks will be in town. Tip-off from Moda at 7. Chris Burkhardt will have Blazers game day at 5 on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. Elsewhere, the Kings have fired head coach Mike Brown after 5 straight losses and a record of 13-18. Doug Christie will serve as interim head coach. Checking the college football scoreboard right now. In the bowl games, we have a delay in the Birmingham Bowl as Vanderbilt leads Georgia Tech 35-13. USC and Texas A&M coming up at 7:30 in the Las Vegas Bowl.
The home of the OSAA is 620 Rip City Radio.
All right, Rip City Drive. One of my favorite things to do is to go through the NFL playoff machine that's at ESPN.com. And what it does is once you get to the last couple of weeks of the season, it puts all the games up. You can click on the teams that you think will win the games, and then it will give you the seeding for the 7 teams on each side in both the AFC and the NFC. And so I have a pretty good idea. I think we all have a pretty good idea of who's going to be slotted where when it comes to the postseason. So this is pretty fun. And I love playoff time. I love the NFL playoffs. I think it's terrific. So what's going to be awesome is we got this game coming up next week, final game of the regular season. Vikings will be at the Lions, and the winner of that game is going to get home field advantage throughout the course of the playoffs. That's the way it's shaping up. That's a big-time football game, and home field matters a lot to both those teams because they play in the Dome. They both have great home field advantages, and we'll see how things shake out. We're also in a situation where we could be looking at Philadelphia and Green Bay in the first round. Philly is the 2 seed. Green Bay is the 7 seed. That's wild. Green Bay likely going to finish out the year at 12-5, but because they're in the same division as both Detroit and Minnesota, they'll be sitting there in the 7 seed, which is wild. Washington looks like they're in, likely will be the 6 seed, and will likely play the Rams, who are the 3 seed, and then Tampa Bay looks as if they're going to be the 4th. So they're going to be hosting a home playoff game again. In the AFC right now, it looks like it's going to be a combination of Kansas City's number 1. They've locked that up. Buffalo's number 2. They're pretty well locked into that spot. Baltimore is the 3. They have pretty much locked up that. And then you've got the rest of the teams. Probably going to be Houston at 4, Pittsburgh at 5, the LA Chargers at 6, and the Denver Broncos at 7. So if this holds through the final week of the regular season, your first-round matchups in the wild card in the AFC, Denver, the 7 seed, at Buffalo, the 2 seed. The Chargers would travel to Baltimore, so you would get the Harbaugh Bowl again. Awesome. And then you get the Steelers at the Texans. And the Texans right now beat up, battered, and playing horrendous football. They are not in a good position right now. But they're going to be in the playoffs. In the NFC, you would get right now, if we assume, who do you think is going to win Minnesota-Detroit? Let's just assume Detroit wins that game because they're at home. They would be the 1 seed, and then you would have Green Bay at Philadelphia, in the 7-2 matchup, Washington at the LA Rams in the 6-3 matchup, and Minnesota at Tampa in the 5-4 matchup. It's crazy. Minnesota will be sitting there in that situation 14-3, 4 games better than Tampa, but playing a road playoff game because they're in the same division as Detroit. The NFC North has been terrific this year. So that's what we're looking at. It's going to be good. For the Denver Broncos, they just need a win, and they're in. They'll be in Cincinnati tomorrow to meet the Bengals, and they finish up final week of the regular season at home against the Chiefs. But now that Kansas City has locked up the 1 seed, my guess is if the starters play in that game, it'll be for a quarter, and then Andy Reid will empty the bench. So the Broncos now in a very good position to make the postseason. But the fascinating part to me is Kansas City. I know a lot of people would suggest that they're a lucky football team. They've won a number of one-score games this year. They've had a lot of breaks go their way. But I just see a team that knows how to win. Their coaching staff is terrific. Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes have great synergy. Steve Spagnuolo is doing a great job working with Andy Reid and coaching the defense. And then when they get in those, clutch situations, into game situations, third downs, special teams plays, they just execute really well. And what I love about the NFL compared to college football is in the NFL, and this has been the case ever since I was a little boy, the NFL is great because it doesn't matter how you look. It doesn't matter how much you win by. The ultimate determining factor is the scoreboard. It's not a beauty contest like college football has been for years. You win the game or not. That's all that matters. But in college football, sometimes winning's not enough. You didn't look good enough in the win. You didn't have enough game control. In the NFL, you can look horrendous for 58 minutes, but you put together a 2-minute drive and win the game, scoreboard. And I just love that aspect of the NFL where wins are the only thing that matters. You can win ugly. You can win big. You can look beautiful in the wins. It doesn't matter. Ultimately, the scoreboard will determine, the teams that are going to be in the postseason. And I think that's perfect. So the playoffs are shaping up. I think right now it's one of 3 teams in the AFC. It's going to be Kansas City, Buffalo, or Baltimore. I do not think that Pittsburgh, Houston, the LA Chargers, or the Denver Broncos are legitimate threats to get out of the AFC. So it's a 3-team race. So the question is, can Buffalo or Baltimore do what Cincinnati did a few years ago and win at Kansas City? That's a big question. 3 teams in the AFC, and in the NFC, I think there are legitimately 3 teams. Detroit, who I have concerns about now because of their injuries on defense. Are they going to be able to get enough stops? Or maybe a better question is, will they be able to score enough to be able to win? And if they get that game at home next week against the Vikings, they'll be playing at home. That's a big advantage for them because on that fast track inside the dome, they only have to win 2 games to get to the Super Bowl. That offense is a legitimate force. Great offensive line play. They got speed. They've got skill position players, and Jared Goff is playing great football. So Detroit's 1. Philadelphia is a clear threat to come out of the NFC. Arguably the best roster in the NFL. They have great balance. Saquon Barkley has been a revelation for them. Their defense is playing well. They're a complete football team. And then the Minnesota Vikings with Sam Darnold. They're legit. Sam Darnold's played great this year. They're opportunistic on defense. They have one of the best receivers in all of football, if not the best. They're a tough football team. And Sam Darnold's playing great football, and I love their coach. Coach O'Connell's awesome. So I think you have 3 teams on each side that are legitimate threats. Green Bay is a bit of a wild card because they're dangerous and they're well coached, and they got some guys who can make plays. So I think Green Bay could make a run, but the problem is in their spot because of the division they play in, they'd have to win 3 consecutive road games to get to the Super Bowl, and I just don't see that happening. And then you have the good stories. What Baker Mayfield's been able to do with Tampa in year number 2. He's played great football. He's matured as a leader. And then you've got Washington. New ownership group, new coaching staff, rookie quarterback in Jaden Daniels, who's going to win Offensive Player of the Year. And Offensive Rookie of the Year. They've been terrific. And to see them be able to get into a position to make the postseason is great. On the AFC side, Jim Harbaugh stepped in, worked with Justin Herbert. He's tightened up their decision-making and their execution. They're still maybe a year or two away from being where they want to be as he continues to load up the roster with his type of guys. But I love what Harbaugh's done, bringing stability to that franchise, which was rudderless for years. The story of Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos with that massive cap hit after they got rid of Russ. And they've got a lot of youth at their playmaking positions, but their offensive line has been effective. They're very good defensively, and Bo Nix has been great. And most importantly for the Broncos, I think they found their QB1. And I wasn't sure on the draft pick. Wasn't sure. But Bo Nix, his leadership, the way he's worked, the way that he's continued to get better week by week, the coaching job that Sean Payton has done, it's tremendous. So I love that story. I would say the most dangerous threat to Kansas City right now, it's Buffalo and then Baltimore. Buffalo looks like they're unstoppable. I can't wait to see that matchup in the postseason. An AFC title game between Buffalo and Kansas City from Arrowhead would be everything you want as a football fan. I think Pittsburgh, props to Coach Tomlin and the work he's done. They did not play well on Christmas Day in that loss to the Chiefs, but they run the football. Defensively, they've had struggles over the last couple of weeks, but they could be a little bit dangerous. If they match up with Houston, that's a very favorable matchup for them, so it would give Pittsburgh a chance to advance. But essentially right now, I think 6 teams that have a legit chance to win the Super Bowl, and we'll see who emerges. But the game to watch, I think, next weekend is going to be Minnesota and Detroit because you're going to have one game, which more than likely will determine who gets home field advantage through the NFC. The AFC is a little more decided. I think right now we pretty much know what's going to happen in the AFC. Kansas City will be the 1, Buffalo the 2, Baltimore the 3, Houston 4, Pittsburgh 5, Chargers at 6, Denver at 7. The AFC is pretty much locked in unless an act of God takes place. But in the NFC, we got more movement, more potential movement, particularly with the top spot between the Vikings and the Lions. So we'll see how it shakes out. But I can't wait. But the playoff machine, good little tool to work with as you're trying to figure out the different scenarios for your teams and where they might wind up. But with Kansas City, we'll see. What's scary about Kansas City right now, they've had issues throughout the course of the year trying to find themselves. But over the last couple of weeks, they're starting to play their best football. And again, this reminds me of the Ducks, right? Everyone freaks out at the beginning of the year because they struggle against Idaho and Boise. But it's not about where you're at the start of the year. It's where you're at when you finish. You want to play your best football at the end of the year. And once again, Kansas City is finding that magic to play their best football when it matters most. And that's the magic of Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo and that coaching staff. And having a guy like Patrick Mahomes who's just unstoppable on third down. And the confidence he brings. Having a veteran like Travis Kelce who, can pick his spots and be able to find openings. And the connection he's got with Mahomes. Andy Reid's ability to be flexible and pliable when it comes to injuries and dealing with the loss of certain playmakers to change the way he runs the offense. They can win in a variety of different ways, too. Kansas City is very good. So there you go. That's the breakdown on the NFL and what we're looking at over the last couple of weeks. Justin Myers is going to join us next, and we'll focus in on the Rose Bowl, and we'll preview the show we got coming up from Spirit Mountain Casino on New Year's Day. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad doing. All right, my next guest is going to be with me at Spirit Mountain Casino coming up on New Year's Day. And we're going to do a pregame show leading into the Rose Bowl from 10 until 1. So be sure to join us on site. We're going to have some Oregon Duck goodies to give away, and we'll be talking football with a triple header in the college football playoff. It's Justin Myers, my man. How was your Christmas, buddy?
Christmas was fantastic. Also, the intro music. I cannot hear that song, Fear the Reaper, Blue Oyster Cult, without thinking about more cowbell. Every time I hear that song now, all I think is, I gotta have more cowbell. I'm the cock of the walk.
Do you know what's great about Christopher Walken is that he can play any type of role and be great doing it, which is awesome.
Like, you don't blow this for us, Gene. We don't have that many songs that feature the cowbell.
So, dude, I can't wait to get your thoughts on this. There were a lot of Duck fans who were, gripping at the draw that Oregon had. What were your thoughts after watching Ohio State dismantle Tennessee?
Yeah, the gripping was accurate because it is. I mean, Ohio State looked the best of any team in the first round. I mean, you could probably make a case for Notre Dame a little bit, but I think what they did to Tennessee, and just knowing like everything throughout the season. See, this is the part about college football that drives me nuts, Chad, and I'm sure it drives you nuts too, is the casuals come in, watch like 2 football games and decide that they know about college football, and they haven't watched football all year. Like, they watched Ohio State play against Michigan, made a determination that Ohio State was overrated and that Ryan Day needed to be. If you watch Ohio State all year long, they played one bad football game. Yep. Even in the loss to Oregon, like, that was a great football game. And when you look at talent for talent, guys on the roster, outside of Oregon, Ohio State, and you can maybe even make the case that Ohio State has the most stacked roster of anybody in the country. So, yeah, I mean, it is a brutal draw for Oregon. Here's where I'm torn, Chad. I truly am torn because I am an Oregon homer, as you know, but I am also a massive college football fan and a West Coast kid that grew up loving the Rose Bowl. So the Oregon fan in me is so frustrated the fact that Penn State gets a better draw than Oregon. But the college football fan in me is like, Ohio State and Oregon in the Rose Bowl is still pretty awesome. You know what I mean? Like, you get the traditional Midwest, West Coast, Big Ten, RIP, Pac-10, 12. You get that matchup on New Year's Day at the Rose Bowl. I've been very lucky to be able to go to a handful of bowl games. Rose Bowl is the best. So the college football fan in me loves it because it's what the Rose Bowl deserves. But the Oregon fan in me is still a little bit frustrated when you look at the draw and you look at all these other games have heavy favorites in the pathway to the Final Four. It seems to be much easier for the rest of the college football teams.
I'm with you on that 100%. I think this game in the Rose Bowl will deliver like the first matchup between these two back in October. I think it's going to be a terrific game. The two biggest things that jumped out at me in that first matchup in October down at Autzen, one, Oregon's ability to really shut down Ohio State's running game in the second half. The Buckeyes got what they wanted on the ground in the first half, but the Ducks tightened it up and really limited them in the second half. I thought that was key. And then Dylan Gabriel's ability to make big plays downfield to stretch the Ohio State defense. Those are the things that jumped out at me. What are the keys for you going into this second round between Ohio State and Oregon?
I think you nailed it with Dylan Gabriel. I mean, that's the advantage I think that Oregon has over everybody else left in the college football playoff. And going back to our fun joke all the way back in September, no, Chad, I do not hate Dylan Gabriel still. I love Dylan Gabriel. But he is an X factor because I don't see another quarterback left in this playoff that is at his level, that if everything else kind of falls apart, Dylan Gabriel can make plays and can single-handedly keep you in games. He's that dynamic. I don't know of another quarterback in the college football playoff that can do that. There's good quarterbacks, don't get me wrong, but I don't know if you look at the way Oregon's defense, and apparently they had the flu and there was a sickness thing, but you look at the way Oregon's defense looked against Penn State and they had to lean on Dylan Gabriel to go win that Big Ten championship. I don't know if there's another quarterback left in the playoff that's good enough to do that. That's the X factor. Here's the other thing, though. You remember, like, Oregon did stop Ohio State's run. It was a huge win for Oregon's defense. they did that whole time without Jordan Birch, and now
Yeah.
they're going to have their best defensive weapon
Great point.
in the game, fully healthy. That's a huge advantage, I think, for Oregon.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Justin Myers is with us as we get ready for the next round of the college football playoff games. What part of Ohio State's attack concerns you the most?
Their speed on the outside. I mean, just big playability and speed on the outside. That's what messed them up against Michigan. And again, kind of going back to kind of casual football fans, people that don't quite understand the dynamics of rivalries, Ohio State in that game against Michigan got caught up in the rivalry. And Ryan Day and Chip Kelly, for whatever reason, decided that they were going to go in and try to out-tough and out-bully Michigan, and it played right into Michigan's hands, as opposed to do what they've done all year, which is use the speed that you have out on the edges and use some of the best big play receivers in the game to go out and stretch the field. Instead, they tried to play into a phone booth. And then you saw, credit to Ryan Day, them make the adjustment because, man, Tennessee, who is, I mean, that SEC defense is legit, but they couldn't hang with Ohio State's speed. They couldn't hang with their athleticism. That's the big X factor for Ohio State. Like, they have legitimate NFL talent at 3 wide receivers, and you get them in open space with speed, and you give Howard enough time. That's a massive weapon for Ohio State.
You know what's bizarre about the college football playoff expansion is Oregon's had one of the greatest seasons in the history of their program. But if they go out and lose this game to Ohio State in a close one and they fail to reach the national championship or they don't win a national championship, I think Duck fans are going to view this team maybe in a way they shouldn't have. Isn't that kind of weird how that works now with the expansion?
This is the new world order of college football. We've talked about it. It's my biggest worry in the playoff expansion is the fact that is it going to take away from the regular season? And it didn't seem to in the regular season, right? That Oregon-Ohio State game was epic. Everybody that was there saw a special football game. Oregon going 13-0 and winning the Big Ten is a massive, massive accomplishment. When you look at everything that Oregon football has done in the past 25 years, this is one of, if not the greatest seasons that they've ever had. They lose this game, and all of a sudden that's wiped away. And now this season kind of becomes a trivia game, right? Of, wait, what was that? Who was that team that went undefeated? Oh, yeah, that was that Oregon team. Like, that's the new world order with an expanded playoff. Kind of reminds me of basketball, right? How many great college basketball teams have we seen, Duke teams and Kentucky teams, that ran through the regular season, have, multiple NBA talented guys on the roster, and then you get beat by a Lehigh, or you get beat by a Hampton, or you get, a second round knockout, and all of a sudden that season is wiped away. This is the new world. This is the world we live in college football with the playoff, is that what used to be the most significant regular season can all be now wiped away with one playoff loss.
And just like March Madness, I'm assuming now for certain teams like Indiana or Boise, if you make the playoff, that's a win. It's a big-time season for you. If you pull off an upset, it's like winning a national championship. But I get a feeling for Oregon, and I've been around this program for a long time like you have, it feels like national championship or bust, even with the difficult draw, that it's like this team's done everything but win a national championship. So it feels like anything less than that would be it would lack satisfaction.
Outside of 2014, this is the closest Oregon has ever come to a national title, right? 2010 was an unbelievable season, and that was a team that was kind of perfectly put together at the perfect time in college football. But Chad, we were there at that game in Glendale, Arizona. Once you saw Auburn's defensive lineman, and you're like, oh, this might be a different deal. 2014, Oregon beat Florida State by 39 in the Rose Bowl. They were favored going into the national title game against Ohio State, ran up against Ezekiel Elliott, but that was the closest Oregon has come to a national title. This year, they legitimately have on paper the best team in all of college football. So yeah, this is not playing for a conference championship as great as it was. This is not playing for a Final Four or just to be recognized. This is a team that's capable of winning a national title. And it's amazing to say that Oregon is in a position to be bummed out of anything less than a national title. But when you have a roster that is this good, kind of created its own monster because this roster is absolutely loaded.
I went back and watched that championship game between Oregon and Ohio State a couple of nights ago. I watched it on YouTube, and I had forgotten how close that game was. Ohio State didn't start to pull away until the fourth quarter. Like Oregon had their chances in that game. They really did.
They had their chances. The biggest thing, and again, I haven't watched it probably since I watched it live when it was happening. If I remember right, and I guess you watched it, so correct me if I'm wrong. It felt like anytime Ohio State needed to convert a third down, they turned around, handed it to Ezekiel Elliott, and nothing Oregon could do on defense could stop it.
That's
whereas
correct.
there were some opportunities there, and you kind of waited for Marcus Mariota to kind of have that magic, but you got that eerie sense of like, nope, no matter what these guys do, it's going to be 3rd and 4. They're going to hand it to that Zeke kid, and there's no chance to stop him, which was just demoralizing. And I think that's how they pulled away at the end, too.
That's really how they did. The other thing I had forgotten about that game, Byron Marshall had one of those ridiculous plays where he let go of the football, and it was so close. He was fortunate that it did not get taken away on that long touchdown he had because he decided to let go of the ball and start a celebration. I was like, I had forgotten about that play. Crazy.
How does that still happen in football? By the way, I know.
That was 10 years ago.
That was 10 years ago. Remember that same season, Utah did the same thing.
Yes, against Oregon.
So Utah dropped the ball on the 1. And 2 weeks ago, what's his name for the Colts? Drops the ball on the 1. Like it's, how is it in a culture of football where one mistake, coaches freak out and they start practicing it. There's a reason why the victory formation is the way it is. It's because of the miracle at the Meadowlands and the fumble and Herm Edwards and everything else. So teams got created the victory formation, yet we still get doofuses dropping the ball at the 1-yard line. It's amazing it still happens.
I don't understand. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. Justin Myers is with us. We're going to be down at Spirit Mountain Casino on New Year's Day from 10 to 1, getting ready for the Rose Bowl. You know, the one thing I love about Dan Lanning and the staff this year, at least I can see it, I'm sure you can too, but the growth with his decision-making and coaching ability, not just him, but his staff, I just think it's great how they really worked with the team week by week, and they got better in all phases, and now right up until the Big Ten Championship, playing their best football of the season at the right time.
Well, 100%. And I mean, I think some of that comes down to execution, right? Like you could probably go back 4th and 8 against Wisconsin, and you go to the break right between the 3rd and 4th quarter. They run jump around. Oregon looked like the safe play might have been to punt it. They go for it on 4th and 8. Gabriel makes a play to Terrence Ferguson in triple coverage, but if they miss that, like, are we going back to the Dan Lanning is reckless and he goes for it too much and he doesn't? So I think a lot of that's come down to execution, which has been great because that's a tribute to the coaching as well. But I've just accepted the fact, Chad, that there is going to be a decision in this game because there's been a decision in nearly every big game for Oregon where Dan Lanning is going to have me ripping the hair out of my head. And hopefully Oregon will execute on that play.
You know, what do you think about these other games? I guess my question with Georgia and Notre Dame, will the Irish be able to run the football enough to put themselves in a position to win that game? How do you see that one?
Boy, against that teeth of that Georgia defense, it seems like a tough task. I think, again, we talk about quarterbacks, right? Carson Beck is out. Like, he just had surgery on his elbow. He's not coming back. He's done. And, I mean, is their backup, is he still in concussion protocol, by the way? Like, we don't even know, like, the status of Georgia's backup.
You ever seen a helmet pop off a quarterback like that before?
Dude, that was next level to where now, and then Carson Beck had to go in and play one-handed and hand it off and still gets the win in the SEC title game. But, yeah, Georgia quarterback is a huge question mark. But, I mean, Notre Dame being able to run against that Georgia defense, I just don't see it happening. And, I mean, I doubted Notre Dame against Indiana. I was way wrong about that. So I'm going to keep doubting them. Maybe they'll prove me wrong. I don't know. I just think that Georgia defense, maybe it's the logo on the helmet, Chad. Maybe it's just I'm just so used to Kirby Smart's defenses just being so tough. But I can't see Notre Dame being able to run the ball between the tackles against that Georgia defense.
I believe Boise State and Arizona State are good enough to pull off an upset. I guess the big question I have with both those schools, how will they adjust to, meeting up and matching up against a different level of athlete at the line of scrimmage?
Yeah, and I think kind of in the same spirit. How can Ashton Genty? And I know I saw him week 2 at Autzen, and he went for like a $175 against an Oregon defensive line that we were just kind of propping up a couple of minutes ago. Can Ashton Genty kind of have that kind of magic going up playing big boy football against a huge defensive front? But yeah, that's going to be. I'm curious. Like, I remember that Boise Oklahoma game. I know you do as well, Chaz.
Horrible.
When you're never ever going to forget. I apologize for bringing it up, but Boise and Chris Peterson in that game, because it was a one-off and it was a Fiesta Bowl where there was no second round of the playoff to go to. They threw everything in the kitchen sink. Everybody remembers the Statue of Liberty, but Chad, I know you know about the hook and ladder that happened and the halfback pass that happened and all the other 17 trick plays that Boise threw at Oklahoma in the fourth quarter because there was nothing to lose at that point in time. I'm curious, does Arizona State and Boise, with the second round of a playoff and a Final Four, do they play with nothing to lose? Does Kenny Dillingham coach with his hair on fire? I think he will. But I'm fascinated to see, usually when you get those matchups where you get, kind of the Cinderella team in a one-off bowl game, you can kind of play with house money. I'm curious to see if they play that way, or if they coach that way, especially Boise and Arizona State, because there is kind of something to lose, which is another round in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's very interesting. One final question for you. Were you surprised at Kirk Herbstreit, Nick Saban, and a lot of the college football analysts who were so critical of the first round of the playoff?
Yeah, I mean, isn't this what it was supposed to be? Do you know what I mean? Like, can't we make the argument that the first round kind of worked, that we learned that there are teams that don't belong, and that's why you have a first round, and that's why the teams that move on did, and that's why Indiana and SMU and Clemson are all home? Because you think about if we were to go back a year, with this year's college football, but last year's format. Clearly Oregon's in, clearly Georgia's in. And then there's the case for Penn State, the case for Texas. Somebody would make a case for Clemson. So obviously a case for Ohio State. Well, guess what? Clemson didn't belong because they lost to Texas. So now we don't have to sit and argue about it. They played on the field. Somebody would have made an 11-1 case for Indiana. Well, we don't have to argue about it because they played on the field and Notre Dame put it on them. Like, I thought that's what the first round was supposed to be. And save me the Alabama and Ole Miss stuff, because you had your chance. Right? Alabama lost to a very mediocre Oklahoma team and blew their chance. They have no business complaining. And so we got 4 clunkers in the first round. That's what the first round was designed to do, right? Isn't it designed to filter out the teams that don't belong, not sit there and cry about it? And that's just the part of this whole thing that just is so frustrating is you wanted to expand the playoff, and you did. And guess what? Teams that probably don't belong there, or teams that don't have a chance to win the national championship, go there, they get their teeth kicked in, and we move on. And this is the other thing. So, Chad, think about this. What if Ohio State and Tennessee was the Friday night game, and that was the first one, instead of Indiana? I wonder if they would have spent a whole hour on College Game Day that next morning complaining that Tennessee didn't belong. But that's what they did to Indiana. Like, Indiana got smoked, and granted, but they were the first game. What if you would have reversed the schedule and Tennessee got beat up at the Horseshoe on Friday night? I don't know if we'd be so up in arms. It just the problem was it happened to be Indiana.
Yeah, they would have just been talking about how great Ohio State looked. They wouldn't have bashed Tennessee. Yeah, you're right. You're right. And they'll get this. They'll continue to tinker with the format, and we'll eventually get to probably 16 teams. So, I don't have an issue at all. I was just happy to sit back and see how cool it looked to have campus site games, which is awesome, by the way. And it's too bad that the Ohio State-Oregon game's not being played in Eugene.
I mean, that would be epic to have round 2 of Oregon and Ohio State at Autzen Stadium. Just keep playing them at the home games.
Oh, my goodness. Well, dude, I look forward to being with you at Spear Mountain on New Year's Day. Happy New Year to you and your wife, and I'll see you in a few days, my friend.
Hey, Happy New Year to all of you. Happy New Year to everybody back at the station. And thanks to you for bringing me on the show on New Year's Day. East Coast New Year's for the Myers family. We're celebrating East Coast New Year's because I got to get up and I gotta drive to Spirit Mountain to hang out with my boy Chad.
You got it, my friend. I'll see you then.
All right, see you, bud.
All right, there's Justin Myers. We'll keep things rolling here. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad doing. Well, it's very sad. The broadcasting world has lost a legend. Greg Gumbel, who is one of the soundtracks, he's part of the soundtrack of my life, passed away at the age of 78 due to cancer. Tim Brando, who is also part of the soundtrack of my life, one of my absolute favorites. I love Tim Brando. Great play-by-play voice. He was a great studio host on College Game Day for ESPN when I was a kid. He put out a tweet and said, "Quick industry note about Greg. Upon my arrival in Bristol," which of course is ESPN, "I was pulled aside by the new leader of their studio operation. He said, 'Tim, you'll be joining John Saunders, who had gotten there a week before me. You guys will do the 7 o'clock show. You can thank Greg Gumbel because he's taking a job with MSG Networks in New York. But before leaving, he left a letter for the big bosses here, and things are going to change as a result.' Greg cared about everyone he left behind there, and I thought to myself, what a super guy he must be. Fast forward 13 years, and we shared the same chair in Studio 43 at CBS Sports. I had it on Saturdays, and he did on Sundays. During basketball seasons, our path crossed a great deal, and it was always a joy to be around. You couldn't meet a nicer guy in our business." And for Greg Gumbel, I associate his voice with, primarily in my life, for his work with the NFL. He was on the call for many big Bronco games during his work on the NFL. And, of course, a very familiar voice with March Madness. But he is one of those guys. Great play-by-play guy, great studio guy, incredible voice, great personality. He's great. And I love this here because this shows his versatility. He's trying to rein in Charles Barkley and Kenny the Jet Smith. This is during the March Madness coverage when Charles talked about having to clean his uniforms in the shower. He would shower in his uniform to make sure that it was clean and ready for the next game. Early in his NBA days, when you'd have like a back-to-back and you're on the road. It's ridiculous, but take a listen to what Charles did and the way Greg Gumbel handled the situation.
I mean, it's so much stuff that goes into this. And shout out to all the trainers also. To have, and the guys who do all the uniforms, to get these uniforms cleaned up and everything. 'Cause, I mean, I'm so old. We used to take a shower in our uniform because, you know, because we flew commercial my first few years.
Wait, time out. There's no era where you did it.
Yes, it is.
Stop, you're making this up.
No, I'm not.
There's no way that you were supposed to wash your uniform with it on.
When I first,
you're making this up.
I'm not making this up.
Let him finish.
I've never heard, no one in the right mind has ever done that.
Let him finish,
Kenny,
please.
when I
And
first,
soap, they give you soap.
Let him finish,
No.
Kenny.
When I first got to the NBA, we flew commercial.
Yes,
that's accurate. I'm not
That's
disagreeing with
So,
that.
so when
That's
you
not what I'm
played the
disagreeing.
night before and flew the next morning, when was you exactly going to get your uniform clean? You had to wash your uniform yourself. So after the game, when you got to your room, you took a shower in your uniform and dried it and dropped on the commercial airline the next day.
Were you with Jed Clampett?
No, please.
That's why you had to let him finish.
Come on. Yeah, have you ever heard of this in your life, Clark?
Well, how are y'all cleaning y'all uniform? Y'all playing in funky uniforms?
No, somebody.
Wash it and dry it or someone else.
When you're flying the next morning.
You can clean your uniform without showering in it.
Well,
That is possible.
After-
You can actually clean it without showering in it.
In it. You don't have to have it on.
No, but it's easier to do it that way. Hey, it's easier.
It's done.
It is easier to do it that way. I'm telling y'all.
Let's just say that people have to count us as being educational now. Chuck, you take it off, you wash it, you put it back on.
No, it's just easier to clean that way.
On that note, let's get you back out to Greensboro and join Ian Eagle, Jim Spanarkel, Evan Washburn, who are going to have a hard time topping this.
There you go. Greg Gumbel slowly reeling it in with the ridiculous story from Charles Barkley. But you know what's amazing about these big-time broadcasters, network broadcasters? They're in their role and in their jobs for years and years and years. And you know this because you can relate. But think about how many big moments for the teams that you love that some of these guys are on the call for. And for Greg Gumbel, he was on the call with Phil Simms when Elway played his final game at Mile High Stadium, his final home game in his entire career, the AFC Championship game against the New York Jets. Gumbel was on the call for that. And for me, because when the NFL made the jump back over to CBS, it was after the 97 season, they went and jumped back to CBS. You know, the Broncos were an AFC team, so they were on CBS, and they were the best team in the NFL at the time. So Greg Gumbel was on the call for many Bronco games. And so you remember the big moments, and you remember the voices that were a part of that. And Greg Gumbel is one of those guys. You grew up watch March Madness, you know, Greg Gumbel's a part of that. But he was a classy guy. He was awesome. And so I hate to see guys like that who pass away. And there's been others too. Dick Enberg, a lot of big-time guys. But Greg Gumbel was a classy one. But I think we can all relate to certain broadcasters we grew up with. And I know a lot of you, even a number of you who are younger than I am, you grew up with Greg Gumbel for a variety of different sports. But he was big time, and he was a class act. Loved him. And I like these guys who are versatile, who can do many different sports too. Gumbel was not just a football guy, but he did basketball, covered the Olympics. He did so many different things, which showcased his talent. All right, we'll keep things rolling here. Rip City Drive. Chad Doing with you. Hope you're enjoying your Friday. Can't believe we're coming up on the end of the year. Looking forward to New Year's Eve and New Year's Day with the college football playoff. It's going to be awesome. And the final 2 weeks of the NFL regular season. It was a big night for Scoot Henderson. He was in a position to have a big moment last night. I'll explain why. We'll get to that next here on the Rip City Drive.
From the Goldberg Jones Sports Desk, your 620 Rip City Radio headlines. Goldberg Jones. Call 1-800-DIVORCE.
It's now 5 o'clock. What's up, my friends? We're checking the college football bowl scoreboard. Right now, Arkansas is on top of Texas Tech 21-5 in the AutoZone Liberty Bowl with 13 minutes to play first half. Coming up later at 5 on Fox, Syracuse and Washington State in the Holiday Bowl at 7:30 on ESPN. USC and Texas A&M in the Las Vegas Bowl. Earlier finals, Navy knocks off Oklahoma 21-20 in the Armed Forces Bowl, and Vandy tops Georgia Tech 35-27 in the Birmingham Bowl. Trailblazers got a game winner from Scoot last night with 0.1 seconds on the clock. Blazers over the Jazz 122-120. Double-double for Scoot, 18 points, 10 assists. Denny Avdia and Shaden Sharp combined for 54. Portland's back at it tomorrow. Dallas is in town. Tip remote at 7. And Chris Burkhardt will have Blazers game day starting at 5.
The home of the OSAA is 620 Rip City Radio.
All right, Rip City Drive. Have you been following this story with Colorado and Miss Peggy, the Colorado super fan? I'm blown away by how Coach Prime takes care of her. It's absolutely beautiful. Love it. Absolutely love it. So Miss Peggy is going to be at a bowl game, Colorado and BYU in the Alamo Bowl, which is terrific. And that's going to be one of the better bowl games because Coach Prime his guys are going to play, which is terrific. So that should be a lot of fun. But they put her on the charter flight, and she gets to head down to San Antonio for that game. So it's a lot of fun. So props to Coach Prime taking care of Miss Peggy. Trailblazers had a big win last night. Scoot Henderson was terrific, and I think it was his best game of the year. I don't think that. I know that. He had a great first half, and then he followed it up in the second half, and it culminated with a terrific final shot.
Down to 6 seconds. Scoot's got it. Top of the key. Drives, attacks on Kessler. Stops, turns, fades. Hits it! With 1/10 of a second, Scoot Henderson gives the Blazers the lead.
Great call from Trav. Scoot Henderson, 18 points, 10 assists. He played the final 6 minutes of the fourth quarter, which was unique because the Trailblazers had a different coach last night. Nate Bjorkgren stepped in for Coach Billups, who's going to miss not just last night's game, but tomorrow night's game as well. He's with family due to the passing of his grandmother, Maddie Billups, which is obviously horrific, and I feel for Coach Billups. There's nothing like losing a loved one, but especially a grandmother. Nanas can be very special, and I was very close to mine. And Coach Billups, if you listen to his Hall of Fame speech, you get a pretty good understanding of how important his grandmother was to him. But Nate Bjorkgren was in, and he did things differently last night. Now, he talked about it after the game, but it was really the youth that he leaned on. And in that fourth quarter, it was Scoot and Denny Avdia and Shaden Sharp. And he was asked about the different lineups after the game, and he wasn't honest. And I think it's because he didn't want to create some type of rivalry between him and Coach Billups because he handled that fourth quarter differently. But take a listen to the exchange after the game.
Yeah, I just thought that lineup really had it going, and I rode them, the whole, last part of the game. I thought that lineup was playing with a tremendous amount of energy. I thought they were extremely confident, and it was just one of those things that was the group that was kind of rolling. So I decided to stay with it as long as I could.
Well, let's get into it. What you like the look that Scoot got? What do you think of that play?
Yeah, it was he had such a great game, a double-double, and I thought that even in the first half, I thought he was playing really well. To have, double-digit assists and just the floor game that he was playing, I liked his confidence. I liked it. Even the play before he tried to attack, we didn't quite get the rebound down there, but I liked it, and I liked the shot. I decided not to call a timeout and let it play on, and the crowd was really behind us. It was a fun game for the guys. It really was.
You mixed up the minutes and the lineups differently than what we usually see around here. Was there a moment for you when you said, heck, I'm the head coach here, I'm going with my gut, whatever it takes to win this game?
Yeah, and I do just exactly what Coach Billups, would have done. That group, that some of those guys that were in there late, that group was just playing really well. So I decided to run that group longer. Instead of breaking that rhythm. And I thought it was a big, there was guys on the bench who were really supportive, and when I called their name to go back into the game, they produced. I thought early in the game, when it maybe wasn't going our way, I don't know how much we got down, but we were getting a lot of passes tipped. They weren't like selfish plays. We were trying to make the right play to the next guy. Someone got tipped. I remember Jeremy was running down the lane and someone was making a pass to the corner man and it kind of hit him. So for us to fight through all of that stuff, I thought we generated a lot of shots that we wanted, especially in the fourth quarter when we needed them the most.
All right, there's Coach Bjorkgren. Props to him. I thought he did a heck of a job last night. But seeing Scoot Henderson in a position to where he's on the floor in the final 6 minutes and having the opportunity to make a play at the end, and then he cashed it in, I'm wondering if this is going to be like a springboard game for Scoot, which will bring confidence and for him an understanding that, hey, when he's given the opportunity, he can make things happen. The problem I have with Scoot is that he looks like the same player that he was last year. I haven't seen a major change or a major jump like we have with, Donovan Clingan, who's improved from, the start of the year up until now. Tamani Kamara, who's made a jump from year one to year two. Shaedon Sharpe, who's showing some flashes of brilliance. Denny Avdia, who, took a couple of months, but he's settled into that bench role, and he's been terrific. He was great last night with 27 points, 8 boards, and 6 assists. I mean, he's a good player. Love Denny Avdia. But for Scoot, we haven't seen a lot of that. And so what I'm wondering after seeing last night's game, what Bjorkgren did is he did not lean on his starters. He didn't go back to Anthony Simons. Simons was on the bench for the final 6 minutes of the game. He didn't play Jeremy Grant that much. He leaned on Avdia and Tamani and Scoot and Shaedon. And so I'm wondering, okay, so if you're not a playoff team and we know that you're destined for the lottery, shouldn't the Blazers be making more of an effort to get their young guys on the floor? And maybe that's going to happen once we get close to the trade deadline, and maybe some things could happen. But I don't see major changes coming before the deadline. Jeremy Grant, I was told last night, is probably, if anyone, the most likely of the veterans to get moved. But they've got to find a way to carve out more minutes in those type of situations for Scoot. They got to find a way to get more than 13 minutes for Donovan Clingan, because the most important thing right now is player development. And we're starting to identify some of the guys who are going to be a part of this core moving forward. I mean, the way I look at it is right now, I think Donovan Clingan, absolute steal in the draft. Tamani Kamara, who has made a major jump from year one to year two, 3-and-D guy, he's terrific. And he brings intensity on defense that this team desperately needs. So you've got Shaedon Sharpe, who's shown flashes of brilliance. Donovan Clingan, who looks really good as a rookie. Tamani Kamara. And Shaedon Sharpe. So you've got 4 players that I think are part of the core. The unknown is Scoot Henderson. I just haven't seen any flashes of brilliance like I have with Shaedon Sharpe. It doesn't mean it's not there because he's young, but I would like to see him on a floor in a position to get more opportunities like we saw last night. The difference is, Chauncey Billups would have gone back to his starters. He would have gone back to Ant, who struggled last night. He would have leaned on Grant. He would have leaned on his starters. That's how he would have done it. But Bjorkgren took a different approach, and because of that, allowed some of the younger guys like Scoot and Avdia and Sharpe to really emerge. And so it was a good moment. It was a good win. And, they're not going to have too many moments like that throughout the year, but that was a game last night that you needed to win. Utah came in early December and beat them by 42. The Blazers had a good response last night. But very happy for Scoot because he's been working really hard, putting in the time, but he's had a lot of struggles this year. So to see him, finally break out, have a terrific game, but also the game winner, I'm just wondering if that moment might produce more situations like that for Scoot. It's only going to further help his confidence. But what a big moment it was for him. It was terrific. Also, Scoot, after the game, was asked, about the game, the win, and also asked about Scoot. Let's take a listen.
Wow, Scoot.
Oh, that was Scoot. How about Denny?
I feel like, most of the games that started the second half like that, we kind of let go. We kind of let go of the gas. And I feel like today we showed some sort of character. I feel like today was a little different. We showed energy. We've been humble. We made the right shots, and I feel like we were together, and we didn't give up on any play. And I feel like everybody did great today. I couldn't say it was only just me. The ball went a little bit in the basket for me, but any other, I feel like, player contributed amazing for that win. So I was happy that we kind of broke the streak of letting go of the gas.
What did you see on that final play with that shot that Scoot made?
What do I see? I see Scoot having a lot of confidence, knowing where he wants to get to on the floor, and I'm so happy for him because he's working nonstop. And, we kind of work out together in practice, and I feel like when I see his success and I see him making that big shot with confidence, that's what a player needs, is to keep shooting, keep believing in himself, and I feel like Scoot did it. And I hope he's just going to continue for sure.
All right, there he is. Denny Avdia, 27 points, 8 boards, 6 assists. Love him. Brooke caught up with Scoot on the floor after the game.
Wow, Scoot all tied up at 120 with under 10 seconds to go. Take me through that last play.
I didn't want to feel rushed. That was the best shot, I could have took at that moment, with Walker Kessel, kind of tracking my steps. So I was going to finish at the rim, but, man, that was the best shot. And everybody played well, though. So when we lock in the defense, we one of the best young teams in the league. So I think we just stay locked in and keep getting more wins. We'll be all right. Was there any way you weren't going to take that last shot? Nah. I would rather that than, sit in the corner. So, if I'm in the game at that moment, and God bless me with the ability to hoop, so I'm going to use my talent. So you kind of break down your celebration following that shot. I get money, man. That's what that is, that money. You feel me? How do you think Chauncey would feel about this win in your play? I think Chauncey is watching it and knowing that we are a different team than the last game we played, defensively, pace-wise, organization. It was all there, but money. Yeah, get to that money. Nice job. Thank you.
All right, there's Scoot. Yeah, good moment for him. Good moment for the team, but most importantly, the young guys. But hopefully, we'll see those young guys continue to get more minutes. Denny Avdia, what a great guy he is. Great teammate, very thoughtful, smart. Love his aggressiveness. He likes physical contact. And he's flash, man. When he gets the ball in his hands, he is straight down the floor. All right, we'll keep things rolling here. Rip City Drive. We'll come back. I want to hear from Coach Prime talking about Miss Peggy, which I think is awesome. And then we'll talk Rose Bowl, Oregon and Ohio State. What a game that's going to be. Are you Duck fans geeked or what? What a game. What a matchup. And what a setting. It's got everything you want in one game. You got the Rip City Drive. It's pretty amazing, but Shadur Sanders and Travis Hunter and the majority of Buffs, I think all of them, they're going to play in the bowl game against BYU. And Coach Prime got insurance for those guys, so if something happens in terms of injury, they'll be protected. But it's nice to see those guys participating. If you want to watch a bowl game, Alamo Bowl might be the best of the best because you have a lot of guys playing on both sides. But I'm a big fan of Coach Prime. You know, the work he's done at Colorado in just 2 years is nothing short of amazing. And I know there's a lot of people out there that can't stand Coach Prime. You don't like the way he rolls, the way he handles his business, the way he runs the program. There are a lot of people out there that just hate Coach Prime. And I know because I hear from him all the time. They think he's a fraud. They don't buy into his, his talk and the way he handles his business. You know, they thought that he was going to stay at Colorado just for a couple of years until Hunter and his son Shadur and Shiloh were done. But he's still there, and he's going to remain there. I think Colorado is the perfect place for Coach Prime because that is the one school where he can coach and run the program any way he wants. He can put all the imprints on the program. He can make it any way he wants because they're giving him the freedom to do that. A lot of schools you go to, especially the Blue Bloods, they expect you to, submerge yourself in the way they do things just to a certain degree. But at Colorado, when Coach Prime took over, they were lost. Worst program in Division I football. And so he comes in and is able to, really make the program his own. He can be himself. He can do it how he wants. And I think that freedom has got to be great for Coach Prime. My guess is he really enjoys it. So this bowl game should be pretty good. But don't forget, when he took over the program, they were the worst in all college football. They had one win. All of their losses were by an average of 29 points. The cupboard was bare. They didn't have talent. So he had to overhaul the entire roster through the portal and did so with great success and, continuing to do a good job in recruiting and through the portal and being able to attract some big-name players, which is cool. So they're now in a situation where they have a chance to get to double-digit wins, get a bowl win, and I just think he's done a great job. Most importantly, I think Coach Prime got into coaching for the right reasons because he wanted to make a difference in the lives of young men and mentor them. So I think his motives for getting involved in the coaching game were pure, and that's why he's kind of a natural at it. And I think even the detractors, if you look at the success of the program and what he's been able to do in a 2-year period, I mean, it's hard to deny the success. Not only are they going to get a chance to get to double-digit wins in just a 2-year period after a 1-win season and the cupboard being bare, but he's got a Heisman Trophy winner, and more than likely his son Shadur will be the number 1 player taken in the draft. That's pretty good. That's good work in a 2-year period. But the one thing I love is the super fan, Miss Peggy, who lives there in Boulder. She's been going to Buff games, basketball games, football games, supporting the university for years and years. She prays for the school. She prays for the athletes. I mean, she's like the ultimate Nana. And Coach Prime has formed a very good, strong relationship with her. And she just turned 100 years old, a few weeks ago. And they sang happy birthday to her at one of the Buff football games, a home game. So you got the entire stadium packed with people singing happy birthday to Miss Peggy. It was one of the coolest things. If you haven't seen it, just go to YouTube and pull up Colorado Happy Birthday Miss Peggy, and you'll see the video. It's pretty sweet. And it reminds me of, Chauncey Billups and the tightness that he had with his grandmother. But, Coach Prime and Miss Peggy have formed a good relationship, and he held a press conference for her on her 100th birthday. And let's take a listen to that.
Miss Peggy's 100th birthday today. You're supposed to clap right now, give her love. Thank you. We are launching a special line of apparel for Miss Peggy. Part of the proceeds will go to benefit her and her family. I wish all the proceeds go benefit her and her family. It should be, but business is business. But this is a wonderful day. It's amazing that God would find 2 people from 2 different walks of life, 2 different generations, and bring them together as he has. She's always greeted me with love, compassion, support, stability, and hope. And I'm thankful to know her. I'm thankful that she can get to me anytime she desires to. And I'm thankful to be celebrating her 100th with her. She is the epitome of CU Buffs. She's the epitome of Buff Nation. She is the rock that holds us all together, and I'm thankful to know her. I really am. Thank you, Miss Peggy. You're so wonderful. Thank you. I love you to life.
Thank you.
Love you.
There you go. There's Coach Prime with Miss Peggy at the press conference. She's been going to Buffalo games since the 1940s. Wrap your mind around that one for just a moment.
It's mind-boggling, Chad.
Her first Buff game was 35 years before my existence.
Said 1940.
Since the 1940s, she's been going to Buff games.
So since, World War II times. No big deal, right?
It's unbelievable.
That's mind-boggling.
And he had made this promise that they were going to get Miss Peggy to a bowl game. And they did. And what's really cool about Coach Prime is that he's given her the full VIP experience. She flew on the team charter to the Alamo Bowl, and she's getting a chance to go to all the events, spending time with Coach Prime and Shiloh and Shador and Travis Hunter and the players, and they're taking care of her. And I just think it's great because it reminds me of my Nana. But she truly loves the program, and she loves the athletes, and she cares about them. And she prays for them. And her and Coach Prime have formed a very special relationship. And then at one of the pep rallies down there in San Antonio, he introduced her and brought her up on stage in front of a bunch of Buff fans. It's pretty sweet.
We didn't set out to say we're going to go to the playoffs. We didn't give you a number of wins. We set out with one goal, and that was to get Miss Peggy to a bowl game. We did that, didn't we, Miss Peggy? That's my most beautiful date I have ever had. And she's not going to divorce me like the other two did. Or was it the other way around? I don't know, but anyway.
There you go. There's Coach Prime.
Gotta love that.
I love it. Love it, love it. And there's a picture they put up with her where she's striking a Heisman pose with the trophy. That's pretty awesome. Peggy Copham, 100-year-old Colorado superfan that's attended Buffalo games since the 1940s. That is amazing. 1940s. Yeah, so she was born roughly the same time my Nana was. My Nana passed away in 2017. She was 91, and Miss Peggy's still going strong at 100. That is awesome. Really cool. 100 years old. So there you go. I think that's going to be a good bowl game because you have a lot of big-time players playing, which is nice. Right now, Arkansas on top of Texas Tech 21-12 in the Liberty Bowl, and Texas Tech is threatening right now. So, some of these bowl games have been pretty good. How about Navy taking out Oklahoma today, 21-20? And what's cool about those service academy schools, those players, it's different than big-time, top 25 college football. Those players are just happy to be afforded the opportunity to play another game. And for them to beat Oklahoma, that's big time right there. Love to see it. Love to see it. Well, Oregon and Ohio State going to match up in the Rose Bowl coming up on New Year's Day. Now, Brenden, I asked you earlier, you're obviously close to the Oregon State Beaver program, but for you think this is the best Oregon football team that you've seen in your lifetime?
Oh, yeah. Throughout the year, I knew there was that possibility for what they did in the offseason, what they brought back, and how well Dylan Gabriel is kind of fit. And then, you've seen it play out, right? I've only ever seen one undefeated Oregon team in my lifetime before this one. That was 2010. And that was a really good Oregon team. That was the beginning of kind of the blur when they were able to, really take college football by storm. And if they didn't play a Superman, Cam Newton, and had, maybe a few bad breaks go their way in that game, Auburn needed a last-second field goal to beat them. So that was, that's the standard for me as far as what I saw as elite Oregon teams. This year, as an Oregon State fan, Chad, I've kind of reserved myself to thinking it might be their year. And for as silly as it is, Chad, I look at college football now as a capitalism-type situation, and it's like if you throw enough money at something, will results show? And I think, ultimately, when all this is said and done, the teams that have the biggest nil budgets each year are probably going to have the best chances to win.
Yeah. Yeah, to win a championship for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Ohio State, another one of those schools. Millions and millions of dollars in NIL money. What's been the most impressive part to you that Dan Lanning and his staff have been able to accomplish throughout the year that you've seen?
The way that they've won, right? I mean, most coach, you go from the Pac-12 to the Big Ten. And now I'm not saying it's a huge difference, but the fact that in best I can remember, Chad, looking at their schedule, the only time that a Big Ten team, minus Ohio State, of course, gave them any pause was when they went and played in Wisconsin. And I think how they have handled the transition has been so impressive. So many schools will be like, you lose Bo Nix and Troy Franklin and a handful of other guys, Jackson Powers, so many guys last year off of what was, a team that came up just a little bit short. I didn't know what to expect this year. And then you bring in Dylan Gabriel, you fill in those other pieces, and Oregon goes and runs roughshod over the Big Ten. So, I feel like a team like them, they're maybe going to have one or two, quote, bad games a year. I think they may have already had it against Wisconsin and still come out. And I think that's the true measure of an elite team. So when you can have a bad game and still win. So I think it's going to be a dandy of a Rose Bowl. But yeah, Chad, if you put my feet to the fire, I think I like Oregon in this one.
Yeah, if you look at their schedule, they had the first two games of the year. They beat Idaho by 10. They beat Boise State by a field goal. They were struggling. They were having issues on the offensive line. Then they went to Oregon State, and they kind of solved some of those issues in a big win.
That could be why I feel the way that I do, Chad. They figured everything out in Corvallis that day and just started rolling downhill ever since.
But after that, they went to UCLA and got a 3-touchdown win. They beat Michigan State by 3 touchdowns. Then they come and they take care of business against Ohio State in a game where Dylan Gabriel went wild. They shut down the Ohio State run game in the second half, and they came up with some key clutch plays late to hold on to that win. It also impressed me that the following week they played at Purdue, and there was no letdown. They shut them out 35-zip. Then they come back home against Illinois, which is a decent team, and people thought maybe the Illini might be able to provide a test. The Ducks blew them out 38-9. Then they went to Michigan, and what impressed me about that game was how they just basically shut down what Michigan did. They shut down the run game. They won the battle at the line of scrimmage. They played a more physical brand of football. And to me, when you can win games in a variety of different ways, when it can show your versatility, it shows the character of this group, their toughness, and the way that the team's kind of been shaped. That was a big moment for me. Then you hammer Maryland. They had the close loss or the close win at Wisconsin, 16-13. But again, I don't look at that as a problem. You're going to have games along the way that are tight. And Wisconsin's a tough place to play. But again, the Ducks played with physicality. They made the plays when they had to late. Their defense stepped up, and Dylan Gabriel did enough to get the win. And then you finally get a bye week after 8 straight weeks of play in conference, and they smashed Washington. And then they come back and beat Penn State in a high-scoring game in the Big Ten. Championship game. They put up 45 points, and Dylan Gabriel was unbelievable. Dylan Gabriel in the biggest games this year has played his best. Ohio State and Penn State, he was terrific. And they're going to need more of that in the game coming up on New Year's Day. They need Dylan Gabriel to be a threat in the run game. They need Dylan Gabriel to be able to buy time and deliver the football downfield. They need the big plays in the passing game because both teams are going to be able to move the football. So the Ducks are going to have to be able to not only make the big plays, but also make sure they put it in the end zone. It's an absolute must. And I just like Dylan Gabriel, like his poise, his playmaking ability. I like him in the run game. I like the way that he can move around and be able to buy time. He's just great. But his calmness in the way he operates, doesn't get too panicked, doesn't get too rushed. And he's been very patient throughout the course of the year, and he's continued to get better. I loved him in Oklahoma. Like, he's just been great throughout his entire career. It's great work by the Ducks. They got Bo Nix when people were down on him. High character, big-time player. And he had 2 sensational years. And then they lose Nix, and they go out and get Dylan Gabriel, another guy with a ton of experience, high-character guy who's a big-time playmaker. And what I'm hoping for Dylan Gabriel, because I care about him so much, I'm hoping that this year will help his draft stock. So maybe he can be taken in round 3 or 4 instead of, falling towards the end of the draft. The big issue for Gabriel, just like with a lot of these quarterbacks now coming out of college, he's undersized. So some of the, intermediate routes over the middle of the field going to be more difficult for a guy like Gabriel because of his height, but his smarts and his accuracy and his ability to move. He's one of those players like a Kyler Murray or someone of that type where, fit is going to be critical, meaning if he can find the right place with the right offensive coordinator, the right coaching staff that's willing to work with someone like that and put him in a position to where he can have an offense more suited to his talents, then he would have a chance to have success. But again, what's important about Gabriel is when you can deliver the football on time and with accuracy, it puts you in a position to where you can have success. And, he, like a lot of these young guys, puts in the study time, understands the offense, can recognize the defense and what it's trying to accomplish. My reason for optimism, if I'm a Duck fan, number one is Dillon Gabriel. At least, going into that game against Ohio State, the better quarterback is on the side of Oregon. And the guy who's more likely to make a big play in the clutch and not turn it over is Gabriel more so than Will Howard. And I like Will Howard, too. He's a high-character guy. A lot of these quarterbacks are so likable. Will Howard's a good dude. I like him. But Gabriel is a big-time quarterback. And the great thing about Oregon in this football game, if you can put pressure on Howard, disrupt his feet, get him off his platform, and make him think a little bit, he'll turn it over. That's going to be critical. Can you limit the Ohio State run game to where you put Howard in obvious pass situations? That's going to be critical as well. And in these type of games, these big-time football games, you know how it is. Usually it's 4 or 5 plays that determine the outcome, and there could be an unknown source of, points or something that can change the entire complexion of the game. That's usually could be special teams. So it could be a big return. Obviously turnovers are going to play a key. But for me, it's all about Dillon Gabriel. Having time to be able to get the football downfield and for the Ducks to be able to score touchdowns and then, being able to put pressure on Will Howard to have to do things he's not comfortable with. Because last week when I watched him play Tennessee, everything they wanted was right there for him. Howard was in a good rhythm. He was comfortable. Their offensive line did a heck of a job, and they've been beat up front. So we'll see how things shake out. What a game. What a game. Of all the games, that's the game this weekend. Georgia Notre Dame should be good. I think Arizona State and Texas is going to be terrific. And I'm anxious to see how Boise State responds in an opportunity against that front seven of Penn State. How is Arizona State and Boise State going to react to a different type of athlete at the line of scrimmage they're going to face for the first time this year? All right, we'll keep things rolling here. Rip City Drive. Hope you're enjoying your Friday evening. I got a big announcement to make coming up next. I wouldn't call it an announcement, but I need to give a special congrats to 2 very special people. I'll give that next. All right, I want to give a shout out to my mom and dad. They are getting ready to head out for dinner. They're celebrating their 56th wedding anniversary today. So I just want to tell mom and dad that I love them dearly. I can assure you they're not listening to the show right now, but 56 years is a long time. Not quite as long as Miss Peggy's been going to CU Buff games, but 56 years is a long time. So love you, mom and dad, and you guys are wonderful together. You guys have been great parents, and I just love seeing you guys continue to grow old together, which is pretty awesome. 56 years. My goodness. That's a long time. 56 years. Trying to think here. So how old am I? So they've been together for 7 years when they got me. Huh. Crazy. 56 years. So mom and dad love you, and big props to you guys. Checking the Bulls scoreboard. Here's what we got coming up over the next couple of days in college football. I enjoy bowl season, even if some of the games, you have so many guys who are in the portal and some of the guys who aren't going to play. Right now, halftime, Arkansas on top of Texas Tech 24-19 in the Liberty Bowl. Syracuse and Washington State are tied up at 14, nearing the end of the first there in the Holiday Bowl. USC and Texas A&M coming up at 7:30 on ESPN in the Vegas Bowl. Earlier today, Navy topped Oklahoma in the Armed Forces Bowl 21-20, and Vanderbilt over Georgia Tech 35-27. Games that are coming up tomorrow and for the next couple of days. We're going to have a lot of games tomorrow, a ton of games tomorrow. Starting in the morning, 8 o'clock on ESPN, UConn and North Carolina will meet up in the Fenway Bowl. UNC favored by 2.5. 9 o'clock on ABC, Boston College and Nebraska. In the Pinstripe Bowl, Huskers favored by 4. 11:15 on ESPN, Louisiana and TCU. In the Mexico Bowl, TCU favored by 10. Iowa State and Miami in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. The Hurricanes are favored by 4. That's an underrated good game. I don't know if you've seen it, but the Pop-Tarts Bowl trophy is awesome. It's this really big trophy, and it comes up into the top, which is shaped like a football. And then one side of the football's got a slot. The other side of the football's got a slot. It's a actual toaster where you can toast your Pop-Tarts in the trophy. Whoever came up with that idea is a genius. And also, any of you that eat Pop-Tarts without toasting them first and you just eat them cold out of the package, that's disgusting. Not a fan of that. How can you not toast your Pop-Tarts, for crying out loud?
I agree with that take, Chad.
Have you seen that trophy? It's awesome.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I'll admit, I have eaten them before. You know, there's times in college when you need to eat something on the run, right? Not toasted or whatever. But, man, you throw them in the toaster for, not even a full, 5, just a couple minutes, get that little tiny bit of heat. Tasty.
Little heat, little crunch.
Yes, sir.
And the goo in the middle of it is nice and warmed up for you. That's a good thing. At 1:30 on the CW network, Miami of Ohio taking on Colorado State in the Snoop Dogg Arizona Bowl down there at Arizona Stadium in Tucson. East Carolina, NC State in the Military Bowl. That's 2:45 on ESPN. 4:30 on ABC, BYU and Colorado in the Alamo Bowl. That's a good one. Buffs favored by 3.5. And then Louisiana Tech taking on Army in the Independence Bowl. The Cadets favored by 14, and that's at 6:15 on ESPN. There's only one bowl game on Monday. No games on Sunday because of the NFL. Monday, you've got Iowa and Missouri in the Music City Bowl. Mizzou favored by 3. And then Tuesday on New Year's Eve, Alabama, Michigan in the ReliaQuest Bowl. Louisville, Washington in the Sun Bowl. South Carolina, Illinois in the Citrus Bowl. Baylor, LSU in the Texas Bowl. And then 4:30 on ESPN, Penn State, Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl, which is part of the college football playoff. Penn State right now favored by 11. And then you've got that terrific triple header on New Year's Day. 3 games on New Year's Day, all playoff games. Texas, Arizona State. Longhorns favored by 13.5. Into the Rose Bowl, Ohio State and Oregon. Buckeyes right now favored by 2.5. Into 5:45 kickoff on ESPN, Notre Dame and Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. And the Bulldogs right now favored by 2. That's greatness right there. All 3 games on New Year's Day, all playoff games from morning until night. Boom. That's everything you need right there. So you think Oregon's going to win the championship, Brenden? Who is the biggest threat to them? Is it the winner of this game, Ohio State, Oregon, or is it Georgia, or is it somebody else?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I mean, I think Georgia, but I have questions, right? Without Carson Beck, like you and I have joked, like, hey, yeah, they got another 5-star to throw in there, right? But a 5-star in the biggest moment of his young career. So I have some thoughts there. And I agree with what Justin said back an hour or two when he's like, and he didn't even say probably, there is no other dude who's got, what Dylan Gabriel has in this field left at the quarterback position. And I get that too. But sneakily, Chad, I think the winner of this Penn State-Boise State game is going to cause some, going to ruffle some feathers, because I get Penn State super favored in this game, but Penn State, to my knowledge, has never played in Boise, never played on the Blue. I think that's going to be probably one of the coldest playoff games we could imagine, maybe even snow on the ground. Penn State's kind of ready for that. But I think that game, and then on the other side, Texas, I still think they've got something. But I think it's all going to come down to matchups, Chad. And going back to what we said earlier, I think right now Oregon's my favorite in the field. But if you have a bad game against a really good team, we've seen. I mean, Oregon's not going to get blown out if they have a bad game, but could they lose if they have a bad game with what teams are left? Absolutely. So I think we're going to be in for a treat of some really good football, like you mentioned. Like this is it, folks. Sit back, get in that lazy boy, and enjoy it.
All right. So Arizona State and Texas. The winner of that game will move on to face the winner of Oregon and Ohio State. Boise State and Penn State. The winner of that game will move on to meet the winner of Georgia and Notre Dame. All right, that's going to do it for us tonight. Trailblazers tomorrow. Mavericks are in town. Chris Burkhart will have game day at 5. Tip-off will be at 7. And then we're back for the Rip City Drive on Monday before we move it into a new year. Big thanks to Brenden Slaughter and Justin Myers, who'll be with me New Year's Day down at Spirit Mountain Casino from 10 to 1 for our kickoff to the college football playoff. So I appreciate your time. Enjoy your night, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.